be here. The Pacific, finally. When Sharon mentioned that she wanted somebody to come to this meeting, and I immediately jumped into the opportunity. Not only because Sharon is the chair of our board, so we have to respond to her commands and suggestions, but also because I was very happy to have this opportunity to see if you say me, I am the one going. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to see the issue that we're discussing today, because that's at the heart of GPAC's work, and human security is really what we do. And specifically what we try to do is promote this human security lens, this human security perspective into different forums, different organizations, specifically, and that will be the topic today, on multilateral organizations from the UN. I'd say we're more partners with the UN in this sense. We have a similar agenda, we work together a lot, we have a very good understanding in these issues. That's why we think that we can work together and partner also to promote this agenda at the regional level with regional organizations, which some are not as open as they are here to the concept of human security. I'm very happy to see the conversation and a lot of talk about human security and how Pacific Human Security Initiative and how it can work with human security. Well, this is not the norm in most of the regions that I work for. It's very difficult to talk about human security in many of the regions, in many other regions of the world. I wanted to just throw some brief reflections about why we do this work and how do we develop this infrastructure for peace. It's more than an infrastructure for peace, it's like how do we try to make connections and operationalize this cooperation from regional organizations, from national organizations, starting from local organizations to national organizations, to the region, to the global, and how we can promote and how, what experiences are there that help us develop this kind of infrastructure and ways to cooperate together. So I just wanted to make a few reflections about what is the current scenario that we find more at the global level, but that also can focus on some of the issues of the Pacific region, some of the challenges that there are for this cooperation, some of the good initiatives that have taken place, and then conclude by sort of like reflecting on what is that we as civil society organizations can do to promote this agenda and these partnerships, the development of these partnerships. So why developing these regional infrastructures or global infrastructure for peace? A lot has been said already in the presentations this morning. Global, the current security threats, current threats to peace and security are not as what they used to be just 20 years ago. Now they're a lot more complex. We have a lot more actors. We have conflicts are not that much interstate conflicts, which is what most of the current infrastructures were created for, to respond to interstate conflicts. Current conflicts or current conflictivity is more based on intrastate conflicts, although it's also true that within those intrastate conflicts you also have some of the external big powers involved, so it's sort of like a mixture between local intrastate conflicts and interstate conflicts. Even in regions like this, and I can very easily relate to the Pacific because it's somewhat similar politically to Latin America, in the sense that if you look at the region, there is no major conflict going on, with the exception of my own country, of Colombia, where we still have, we're still coping with it and trying to find a solution. We're currently under peace talks, and with that exception, you see at a region that really is not being focused on by the international community because of the conflicts. So we have to respond to our own conflictivity and to our own drivers ourselves, because we're not getting attention from other regions, which is, so we have to, it's up to us. And the fact that we don't get attention doesn't mean that there is no conflict. And so I was listening not only to the presentations about the drivers of conflict in the region, but even talking to my taxi driver in my ride from Nandi to Suva, and learning. That's one of the things I love about traveling. Learning about what people, how they experience their everyday conflictivity. Here, he enlightened me about, with my very limited knowledge of issues in the Pacific, he gave me some very good insights on some of the issues that play out here and that drive tensions in the region. Some other issues, poor governance, that's one of the drivers of conflictivity, institutional weaknesses of the state, that the national, but also the regional level, there's been a lot of reference to this meeting we had in Vienna a month ago. And one of the analyses that the Assistant Secretary General of the Organization for Islamic Cooperation was doing, he's Egyptian, and he was saying, well, in the Middle East we are inventing, there's this failed state concept, but I'm afraid we're inventing the concept of the failed region. And we're moving from failed states to failed region, and then we have to think regionally to address some of these issues and work together. And this work together means, again, connecting different levels of action, and because a lot of the issues that happen at the regional level really can only be addressed at the local level. One of the mottos that came out of the conference is, the think globally, act locally. Was reframing to think locally and act regionally. And I think that's one of the things that we have to start thinking about and getting out of our national boxes and seeing how what happens in our home countries affect the overall region and how the solution also comes from the overall region. In that sense, we find in GPAC, we found it natural to engage with regional organizations. As you know, in GPAC we're organized on regional basis. You have the Pacific region here, we have the Latin American region, the East African region, Southern African region. So we're already thinking on regional basis. And in that sense, what regional organizations could do to conflict prevention was always in our agenda, was always part of what we thought that we could contribute into the development of this global infrastructure for peace. Why regional organizations? I think it's almost evident. Regional organizations are, for once, a stakeholder. They as opposed to other organizations that might come into a region or something, say, well, we have no exit strategy. Which is our region. We're staying here. We're stuck here. We have to deal with our opponents because there's no. I'll close my country mission or regional mission and leave. We stay. And we engage, and then and because of that, we are very interested in finding real ways in which we can find solutions to our problems. Also, because we have done some research on this, and we have concluded that in most cases, when regional advices and regional recommendations to address some of the conflict drivers tend to be more accepted by peers in the region and tend to lead to more positive outcomes than other types of interventions. There's of course also big knowledge of the regional organizations know about the region. They have deep knowledge. They have deep connections. They know. They have this feeling on the sensitivities of X or Y policy decisions. So they're better placed than other actors to understand and to act in this context. So with that reflection, we thought, okay, well, let's work out together as civil society. How can we better work to engage with regional organizations. We started first a reflection forum, convening regional organizations, convening civil society organizations from the different regional networks of GPAC, and thinking, it's like, okay, what do you do? Do you work with the regional organization? What is that you do? Say, oh, we do this, we convene meetings, we produce early warning briefings, and we were exchanging knowledge of what different regions were doing and how they were working with their respective regional organizations. And then we said, okay, what can we do together? How can we develop a strategy then to do this more systematically? And we sort of like came up with a menu of options of how could you engage with regional organizations in different regions, even if, and it's not the case in the Pacific, but in many regions, even if they don't want to be engaged with you, with the civil society organizations. How can we create spaces in which regional organizations and civil society can do joint reflections, joint thinking, joint analysis on what the main issues are in a particular region. And we started developing this line of work that's it's brought us here. We held a big first conference in Madrid in 2010 where the Pacific Islands Board represented, Andy Fontoy attended the meeting, again exchanging experiences from what is happening in SARC, what is happening at the Organization of American States, what is happening in ASEAN, how can we work together, how can we enhance this. And, and this is an agenda that we've been developing for the past 6 years now, and where we have acquired some knowledge and have developed some recommendations and created some knowledge about it. Also, working with regional organizations, it's of course a key priority also for the UN. From the beginning, the United Nations, through Chapter 8, started thinking of the UN Charter, started thinking like, how can we better articulate cooperation with regional organizations for peace and security. One of the things that we've been focusing now is how to strengthen this cooperation with the regional organizations and the United Nations system, how we can update Chapter 8, because while it is there, it is not quite living to its possibilities and to the expectations, so we're also thinking about how we can enhance this its potential. And also, finally, on the rationale is that we've seen through our research that regional organizations, when they develop capacities to work in conflict prevention, peace building, and when they do develop these capacities and work together with civil society organizations, they tend to be relatively effective. We have very good examples of our own regional GPAC networks working, for example, in West Africa, with the economic community in West Africa, where our network, the West African Network for Peace Building, is actually the one who provides the intelligence or the wording, and or regional organizations, in this case ECOWAS, that provides the political muscle to act on the warning provided by civil society. So we see similar, in Eastern Europe or in Europe, we see similar schemes with the OSCE, which have developed some interesting mechanisms of engaging with civil society. So we see that the organizations that are at the forefront on conflict prevention, peace building, have developed a very close working relationship with civil society organizations. However, there are many challenges for this, both for engaging with civil society organizations and for regional organizations to engage with the UN. Let me start by the second one, regional organizations engaging with the UN, because while it seems almost logical that this is how it should be, it's not as easy as it sounds. Some people have, some academics, they refer to the issue of divided responsibility. They say, well, maybe, of course, it's very hard to speak against collaboration, and there's a lot of things being spoken about the need to collaborate, increase collaboration, but in reality, there is a fear on both sides, on the UN Security Council, say, well, are we maybe undermining our authority by delegating too much power to other regional organizations? And other regional organizations, on the other hand, they say, well, yeah, maybe we just wanted to deal with our issues regionally, we don't want the UN here involved here. So this it's not so easy to articulate this collaboration between regional organizations and the United Nations. On the other hand, it's also not so easy to establish this collaboration specifically with civil society organizations. Again, it's very hard to find somebody disagreeing with the need to cooperate with civil society organizations. It's not so something that you say openly, but in reality, we say that we've seen that it's very difficult for it's not evident that this collaboration should be taking place. It's not common for an official at the regional organizations which represents a government to think, oh, I have to engage with civil society. You say, why? Why civil society? We're a state. We're states. We're representing our governments. We don't have to talk to civil society. And on the other hand, civil society says, well, why do you want to engage with these regional forums? They do nothing anyway. They are, interested. They have their own interests. They represent their governments. They're not really following our agenda. So there is, in general, a feeling of skepticism also on behalf of civil society on why to engage with regional organizations. What we've been trying to do is to break these silos and to break this skepticism and then say, well, create spaces where to say, well, you can actually think and reflect together on what's the issues, and everybody, depending on the role that they're playing, say, well, this is how I can contribute to addressing a particular situation. So that's in a nutshell what we've been trying to do in CHIPAC. And basically, when we frame what is our work with regional organizations, we frame it very much in these terms. It's what we're trying is to have regional organizations including a human security perspective in their work. And what we see that we need is we need to harmonize the rationale of national security, which is what many of these organizations were created actually to defend the national security, to defend their own sovereignty, and we're saying, well, this is not only about the needs of the state, the security of the state, this is about the needs of the people who live in those states, of the citizens of those states, and you have to be as responsive not only to the governments that are sitting in your General Assembly, but to the people who live there, and you have to understand what are their concerns, what is driving them, and how you can engage that. And if you want to be relevant as a regional organization, you have to respond and you have to be responsive to the needs of the people who live in your member states. In that sense, so we see an opportunity for regional organizations to increase their capacity for responding to conflict by precisely engaging with civil society and getting this human security perspective that is not evident for many of these organizations. So that's what we've been trying to do with all our engagements. Again, it's not easy. And what is the main issue here on how we can operationalize cooperation with civil society and regional organizations? And the main problem is, like I mentioned it before, it's lack of trust. There is often a suspiciousness from regional organizations into civil society. It's not in their DNA to cooperate with civil society, and they're like, yeah. And like I said, and the feeling is visual often with civil society organizations. So we're we're thinking about this line of work as a confidence building mechanism, by creating spaces and saying, well, we actually have similar goals. Let's work together towards them. So a lot of what we do to develop this global infrastructure for peace, or this regional infrastructure for peace, is basically just simply creating spaces for interaction and for knowing, okay, what is your mandate as a regional organization? What are your limitations? And also for this regional organization, saying, okay, what is that you do in conflict? What is the work that you do? How can we somewhat include that in our work as well? We think it's important to create these spaces to develop a joint understanding of the problems, and not only joint understanding, but to come to co-creative solutions, to have spaces to think jointly, okay, this is our problem, this can be our solution, but not something that comes from nor from the regional organizations to the civil society or to the civil society saying this is what you have to do, but creating the spaces like, hey, we have this problem, how can we think of something to do about it? We've also seen that it's important, the different mechanisms of engaging between civil society and regional organizations are important because one, like I said, it's not popular to say, well, I'm not engaging with civil society, and some organizations actually do try to engage with civil society and do establish mechanisms for that, but these mechanisms are maybe not the more efficient. Sometimes actually many civil society organizations feel that they are designed just to tick the box, consulting with civil society, but there is no real substance in the engagements. And we're trying to say, well, maybe you don't have to have such formal mechanisms that you have to come to the General Assembly and you get your 5 minutes to speak, and then it's forgotten and then you're checked. It's like, well, maybe if you create some platforms where you can have smaller number of people at the table, but with real expertise on a particular issue, that might be more valuable than just a consultation once a year. Let's do a more structured, informal consultations, depending on the expertise of the different civil society organizations on the particular issue being discussed. So we essentially see how do we operationalize this cooperation, and I wanted to stress mainly 2 points. One is to create spaces for policy discussions. And like I said, it doesn't have to be policy discussions of 100 organizations, but it can be 20, but with good expertise and with a lot of interaction, and then you can see actually where the recommendations are going, and you can have a good level discussion. So this creation of policy forums is important. Very happy to see that here in the Pacific, you're actually moving towards that, and that we actually have resources to put into practice these kind of dialogues with the Pacific Island forums. And related to that, the second aspect on how to make this is operationalize it effectively is the need to work through platforms of NGOs or platforms of civil society organizations. And that's, if you look at the experience of when these dialogues are being successful and are taking place, it is because, to a great extent, civil society organization is able to organize itself and to decide, okay, who is going to be for this particular discussion in the table, who's going to be, if we only have 20 people sitting in a particular meeting, who are going to be those 20 people? And what you hear from many of the regional organizations is like, that's key, because that's something that we cannot do ourselves. We cannot say, oh, you, and you, and what civil society sits at the table. Now, if civil society manages to do that for the organizations and to say, no, we'll take care of that organization, of telling you who should be at the table for a particular meeting, depending on the expertise, etc. That's an incredible value for the organizations and for the effectiveness of these kind of forums. And one final thought before opening these discussions or these comments to the table, and it's the role of leadership. And what we have been looking at, or the conclusion is that leaders matter, that leadership matters. And what we have seen is that, of course, regional organizations have big constraints. They owe their allegiance to member states. They feel that they are often limited by what these member states allow them to do, by the mandates given the member states. But we have also seen that when the leader of a particular organization conceives his or her role talking about the Secretary Generals, more as generals and less as secretaries. When they give direction, when they give leadership, when they put processes in motion, things change and they become their organizations, and they become more and more influential. So what we're what we're advocating is for these regional organizations or the staff at the regional organization, and specifically the decision makers, say, well, you're not only supposed to respond to the countries that are at the table, but you can also take a leadership role. You can also say, no, this is what we want to do, and start doing it. And once you put that in motion, even if there are countries that are reluctant to do it, that reluctance starts diminishing. So it's important that we are aware of the role of the leaders of these different organizations and how they can steer the transformations in the way the organizations work. Because the second reflection is that if leadership matters and if what the Secretary Generals or the directors of these organizations do is important, then advocacy matters as well. And that's where us as regional civil society organizations can have a role. We can advocate for regional organizations to be more inclusive, to, of course, to be more transparent in their work, to be more accountable, not only to their member states, but to us, and to ask what you have been doing. And that's, I would like to conclude by inviting you to fulfill this role of calling on regional organizations or advocating to regional organizations and to making this call on how they can work better through collaboration with civil society organizations and how they can become more responsive to our needs as communities. And that's, I think, an important role that we can accomplish as civil society organizations, and I hope the Civil Society Forum can contribute to put that in motion, that kind of work in the Pacific region.